Hi all. Today we'll see how useEffect works in React, and starting from the basic implementation we'll see what all useEffect offers and how we can make the most out of it. Before proceeding further, I'll brief you about the basic React app that I'll be taking as an example to demonstrate the useEffect. Okay, so it will be a very basic app, and you can see that we just have two dependencies as React and React DOM, and we are using parcel for bundling and just for the local hosting, and that's it. So we have this HTML file, and we have this app root inside our body, which we'll be using as the React DOM's root. You can see over here that we are using our app root as the root of React DOM, and there inside that root we are flushing the body component. And finally we have this body component, which is the functional component and which has nothing, just the minimal things like the heading which is greeting. It has an input field with the ID of username, we'll be using it later, and a button that says greet me, but again does nothing at all at present. And in the right side we have this small portion of the browser where we'll be seeing the output, and since we'll be playing with the console, so I have that opened already. So let's start with starting the application with npm start. So yeah, this app is running on port 1234 in our local host, and that is already open. So let's refresh it. So you can see we have this header input field, and which is a button that says greet me. So now in this example we'll see how useEffect works. What is the syntax, what are the features that is provided by the useEffect function. And yes, useEffect is just a function, nothing else, no high level terminologies, just a function. And since it is provided by React, so it is also called as hook. Okay, now we'll see the syntax of useEffect. So useEffect needs a callback as the first argument, which is needed, but the second argument is completely optional, and that is dependency array. And we'll see everything in detail. Okay, so let's pass the first argument, that is a callback. So we'll say since this is the first time we are playing with the useEffect, so let's log I'm inside useEffect, right? I'll save it and see instantly it prints in the console that I am inside the useEffect. So let's refresh it. Okay, you can see it is in the console, but this greet me is not working. Let's add one more feature, that is whatever we will enter in this text field and press on greet me, it will just update that username. Okay, so let's have a state variable which will be username, and its setter method will be set username. And again we'll be using another hook, or in simple terms a method that is provided by React, and the initial value, let's put it as guest. Okay, let's save it, and well, it will do nothing at moment. So in the button let's add a functionality on click of it that says update username. Okay, and let's define a function update username, which will simply update whatever value we'll be entering in this input field. So let's fetch the name with document dot get element by id, right? And we'll pass the id as username since we have entered here, right? And we'll fetch the value inside it. Okay, so we'll store that in the name variable, and we'll update the username with this name. Correct. Okay, now I'll save this. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll now check whether it is getting updated, and for the sake of that, let's also print it on the screen as username, right? Now I'll save it again, and you can see we have this guest. So let's print Rohit, and I'll say greet me. Okay, it is Rohit. Now I'll say Ram and greet me. Okay, that says Ram. But if you'll notice the console, that this console log statement is getting executed every time we are updating this name. Let's say Raman, greet me. This 2 becomes 3, right? That means every time I am updating this username, this callback of useEffect is getting called, right? Now let's add another feature, very small feature, that is a theme. Okay, we'll just add a very small feature of changing themes, right? Which says toggle theme, and on click of which it will toggle theme. Okay, it will invoke this method, and we'll just define this function as toggle theme. Okay, now what do we want to do? So we want, whenever we click on this button, so the theme, if that is light, it will turn to a dark mode, and if that is a dark mode, it will turn to a light mode, right? Okay, let's do that. Now we want to toggle the theme, so let's use another state variable as theme and set theme, right? We'll use state. Now this is not a correct way of setting theme to your application. It is just I'm just using this to demonstrate. Okay, so let's define a theme constant, which is an object, and it has a key of dark, which has the value of dark string, and light, which has a value of light. Okay, now initial value, it will be theme dot light. Cool. Now whenever we'll be toggling theme, I'll say if theme, okay, equals theme dot light, then we have to set the theme as theme dot dark. Cool. Else we'll set the theme as theme dot dark. Sorry, light. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so basically we are just toggling the theme. If that is a light, we are setting it to dark. If that is already dark, then we are setting it to light. Okay, now let's do one thing. I'm inside useEffect, so let's delete this and let's print current username. Okay, let's print username. Fine. Okay, great. Now we have toggled the theme, but hold on, we are missing something, and we'll see. Although the current username is printing, but we are missing a very important thing, that the toggle theme is actually not doing anything on the screen. So let's do one thing. Whenever the theme is dark, okay, if theme is dark, okay, what do we want to do? We'll say document dot query selector, right? For those, if you don't know, query selector takes argument as something which will be using, which we actually use it to select the element in CSS. Okay, so if there is an element, let's say h2, we'll be saying h2. If there is an element saying body, we'll be saying body. If there is a class name, we'll be using dot in whatever the class name it is, right? And same goes for ID. If we have the ID, we'll be using hash and the ID name. Okay, so we want to select body, and we want to set the style, okay, and the background color. and the background color to be what? Black, right? See, if the theme is dark, we want the background to be black, and we want the color to be white. Fine enough, nothing complex here. Okay, now else, that means our theme is not dark, we have a light theme, and if we have the light theme, then we can set this properties in a toggled way, like the background will be white and our text color will be black, right? Now I'll save this and I'll just toggle the theme. Okay, it is working, right? But hold on, there is a problem. Whenever I am toggling theme, the console prints current username is guest. Now the problem is, if we are not changing the username, we don't really want to print this line. We want this line to be printed whenever there is a change in username. Okay, so this the second parameter. Okay, now the second parameter that I had told as dependency array. If we'll not pass the second parameter, the useEffects callback function, that means this function, right? This function is going to execute for every update in the state variable. So there are two state variables, right? You can see here we have two state variables. One is the username, another is theme. So any of them, either the username or theme or both, if changes, useEffects callback will be triggered. Now the problem is, for our use case, this line, we want this line to be printed every time when there is an update in the username and not in the theme. Okay, so what we can do is, we can do one thing. We can say, okay, let's do one thing. Let's pass a second argument as the dependency array. Okay, so what this is actually, so dependency array says it accepts an array. Cool. And inside array it accepts either a state variables or a props if this body needs. So let's say there is a props passed by parent of body as something like key. Okay, or let's say we have a name. Okay, so in that case these are called as props. Okay, so either the props or the state variable can be passed in the dependency array. And the dependency array says, I mean the useEffects second parameter says, whenever in the list of the variables that you are passing inside the array, if that changes, only then I'm going to invoke this callback method. So whenever in our case, we are saying whenever username will be changed, just execute this function. Correct? So I'll save this and now I'll toggle the theme. Oh, toggle theme is not working, right? But let's check for the username updation, right? Okay, it says current username is Rohit. Okay, and Raman, greet me. Okay, it says current username is Raman. So that means whenever username is changing, it is executing this. But if we are toggling theme, it is not going to execute because we are not mentioning anything over here. So if we'll do something like this, okay, so the problem will again become the initial problem when we were not passing any of the dependency array, right? So now if you'll see, if I toggle theme, it is again going to print this current username is Raman. So how can we get rid of it? Because we seriously don't want to print the redundant username again and again because we are just toggling the theme, right? Okay. So the solution is, yes, we can have multiple use effects for different use cases. So we can segregate the use effect for updating the theme and one for updating the username. Okay, so here we want what? We want the theme logic to work here in the second use effect. Okay, we are doing theme logic, and here we are processing our username logic. Okay, is that clear? Now here we are printing. So what we wanted this username to be printed every time username is updated. So now it will work fine because we are passing username in the dependency array, right? Great. But here we are not passing anything, right? And what we want this to be executed whenever we will be updating what? The theme, right? So that means the second parameter in the dependency array, we should pass the theme as the dependent argument. And what does this second use effect tells is, whenever this theme will be changed, just execute this logic. Now I'll save this file and I'll refresh it. Okay, now we'll check independently both features. So let's check for Rohit and greet me. It says okay, yeah, it is working. Raman, okay, it is printing. Ram, it is printing. Now just toggle theme. Okay, that's great. We don't want anything else to be printed in the console, since we are just toggling theme, we are not updating any username, and that's working perfectly fine, right? So that means we have seen when we'll not pass anything to the use effect second argument, it will be executed every time the state variable changes. But if we'll pass the second parameter of use effect, that is a dependency array, and inside that array we can pass the props or the state variables as the dependents. So whenever those variables changes, the use effects callback will be executed. Now there is one more possibility. What if we'll not pass anything? Okay, so since we already know that we can have multiple use effects, so we'll try writing one more use effect, and that will say what? Log, and it will say blank dependency array. Okay, and we'll pass the second argument, but keeping in mind that we'll not pass any of the variable inside that array. We'll be keeping the variable as blank, okay, with the length of 0, right? Now what will this do? Let's save it and run it. We'll toggle the theme, we'll toggle the name, or we'll change the name, not toggle, we'll change the name. And you see, whenever we toggled, nothing has been printed from this use effect. Okay, when we have toggled the name, only the name's use effect was triggered. I mean this username callback, right? But this blank dependency array was executed just for the one time, and that is because when we don't pass any variable inside the array and we'll keep the array as blank. Remember, keeping array blank and not passing this array at all are two different things. Okay, so when we'll keep this array blank, okay, empty, so the callback method is executed just after the initial render. That means this body will be rendered, okay, and this callback will be executed for once. That's it. And that's how use effect works. We have seen use effect takes two parameters. One is the callback, and second is the dependency array, and the dependency array can have three possibilities. One, not passing at all. Second is passing with certain dependents, right? And third possibility is passing the dependency array but keeping it blank, what we are seeing over here. Basically, this can be used for logging purpose, right? Now, we have seen almost many things of useEffect, but the single and yet most important thing is missing, and that is a cleanup function. Now, what is that? So, the useEffect's first parameter is a callback method, and method can broadly have two types, right? The method could return something, or method could not return something, right? If method does not return something, it's fine. But useEffect says for the callback function, okay, if that callback function returns something, it has to be a function itself. What is the meaning? So it says if you want to return, you have to return a function, and this function is also called as cleanup function. Okay, this is cleanup function. Okay, now what is the use of this? So let's log it out. Let's log cleaning. Let's pass the username. Okay, and I'll save this and I'll run. Well, just refresh it. Let's start from the beginning. So we have the current username as guest, right? So let's pass Rohit and we'll say greet me. But you see, it says cleaning guest and then current username is Rohit. Okay, so let's print Ram and greet me. Okay, now again it says cleaning Rohit and the current username is Ram. And what is this? Why is this running like the way it is? So now understand when and how this cleanup method is executed. So see, what is the order in which various methods are executed? So this is a component, okay, and here is the return, and which what exactly it returns? It returns a JSX, right? So whatever we have written, we have a return statement, and this is a basically a functional component, okay. So we have a return statement in which we pass JSX, okay. We are returning JSX, and this JSX is rendered onto the screen, and then the use effect is called, okay. For any of the component, it will first render, and then it will call the use effect, no matter what the dependency array is. And this is true for the first render. This is the first render, okay. We're not talking here of re-rendering when the state or prop changes. So during the first render, use effect is going to be called every time, no matter how many use effects are there and no matter what are the dependency array it has, the second parameter it has. Now for a while, let's forget the cleanup method. Okay, let's forget the cleanup method. So whenever the state or prop changes or it is updated, so there are three possibilities. If for any of the use effect, if the dependency array is not passed at all, so whenever there is a state update, the use effect will run again and again, correct? Because there is no dependency array. The other possibility is if there is a dependency array but it's an empty array, okay, so it will run once during the render, and after the state or prop has been updated, it will not run. It will not run further because the array is empty. Now there is this final option in which we have some dependence in the array. So we have some dependence, like we have username in one of the use effect, we have theme in one of the use effect, right? So in these cases, okay, whenever that particular variable, at least one of them, so let's say if there is a, b, c and d dependent, this is the dependency array we have, right, for any of the use effect. So if any of, at least in one of the variable should change from this dependency array so as to run the callback of use effect, okay. So this is the first parameter is the callback, and the second param is a dependency array. And in order for this callback to get executed after the prop update, at least one of the variable from the dependency array needs to change. I hope up till here it is clear, right? Now, talking of the state update. So whenever the state or prop is updated, so out of n use effects, okay, so there could be some use effect that could return cleanup method, some cannot return, or it can be possible that all of the use effect return the cleanup method, right? So cleanup method is registered here. It is registered here, okay, in the render phase. Okay, now whenever the state update is done, so again the JSX is rendered with a synchronized value. Now this stage is very critical. So if the cleanup method is registered, and you must know that cleanup method is registered, that means it is being returned from the callback of one of the use effect, okay, and this callback is returning this cleanup method. So if there is a use effect A which returns a cleanup method, okay, this is the cleanup method returned by the A, and assume that the dependency array is username, right? Okay, now if theme, okay, if theme is changed, then there is no point that this use effect is going to be executed. The callback of this use effect is going to be executed. Is this right? Because the theme, if there is a use effect which has the dependency array of theme, that callback will be executed. But here in this case, we are assuming this use effect A, okay, it has a dependency array of username. So there is no point that this use effect A is going to be executed again, right? In that case, the cleanup method of A is not going to execute, okay? Then when cleanup method is executed, so remember, cleanup method is executed not before the render, okay. Instead it is rendered after the state update. It is first rendered and then it checks what use effects callback we need to execute. Now assume that there is a change in username, okay, our username has changed. So in that case, this use effect A, the callback of this use effect A will be executed, okay. And now since this use effect A has a cleanup method A, so before that use effect A, the cleanup method will be executed. So if I had to rephrase it, cleanup method of particular use effect is called only when the same use effect is going to be executed again in the next rendering cycle. So there is a state update, rendering is done. After rendering is done, it checks which use effect we are going to execute. Now, if the use effect we are going to execute had some cleanup method returned out of it, so this use effect A is returning cleanup, okay. Now if that is returning a cleanup method, that we are calling it cleanup method A, and if that is the case, then we need to first execute the cleanup method and then we are going to execute the callback of use effect, okay. So again, if I have to recall that there are two use effects, let's say the use effect with a dependence of username and let's call it cb1, okay, callback 1, and there is another callback 2 which has a theme as dependent array, right? But this callback returns a cleanup method, okay. This callback 1 only returns the cleanup A, let's say, but it does not return any of the cleanup method. So if theme changes, okay, then this callback is going to be executed, okay, which does not return any of the cleanup method. That means we are not going to run any cleanup method, not even this, okay. But if we will change the username, then we need to apply this use effect. We need to apply this, invoke this callback method, callback 1, right? But since this is returning cleanup method, so before applying or invoking this callback one, that is useEffect A, see useEffect A, we need to invoke the cleanup method, and that is the proper order of how cleanup is executed. So remember, cleanup method will be executed in the next cycle, but with all the data from the previous cycle. That means here the name of the user was guessed, here it becomes Rohit, but the callback, the cleanup method is being registered here, so the data of the username that it has is of guest. So when it will be executed, it will have the data of guest. So cleanup method is executed after the rendering is done and before the use effect, the corresponding use effect from which this cleanup method is being returned. And that's the proper order, and that's all about the cleanup method execution order. That's it. There is a strict warning that if the method, the callback method, if it returns, it has to be method. Okay, but what if we'll return something else? Because we are returning a method here. So let's do one thing. Let's return something else. So let's return the username itself. Okay. So how about that? So let's save it and okay. Okay. After saving, it is getting a problem. It says destroy is not a function. Well, what does that mean? Okay. So whenever useEffect notice that the callback it has is returning something, it expects it to be strictly a function. Why? Because it will use that to execute after the next re-render, right? But if we are not passing the value as function, so it will throw error, because it, when in the future when there will be a state update and it will try to run that method, it has to be first a method, right? But we are not passing it as method, we are just passing a value, a string here. So a string, when that string will be executed, like for example this guest value, I mean just this value will be executed, how that a function will be executed like this, right? But this does not make any sense, right? Because this is a string, and that's why it throws an error saying that destroy is not a function. So strictly we have to return a method here, and that will be termed as the cleanup method. Okay, and to understand what is the use of cleanup method, let's take an example, and that will be in the next video.